Under the fading sun, the auction yard simmered with a cruel kind of expectancy. Dust swirled in the orange light, caught in the heat of the day and the stench of sweat, horses, and whiskey. Men leaned on rails, coins jingling in their pockets, voices low and coarse as they waited for the next body to be paraded. The place smelled of money and desperation, as though every breath was a bargain struck with shame. Among the buyers stood Silas Boone, broad-shouldered and tall, his hat brim shadowing a face that looked carved from weather and silence. Wealth had come to him not by gambling or charm, but by backbreaking years bent over his father's land, now swollen into one of the biggest ranches west of the river. Rich, yes, but lonely always. He had told himself he came only to collect a new horse. Yet something in his chest pulled taut as he saw her. Ayanna Redbird stepped into the circle. Chains clinked softly against her wrists, though she held her head high, her black hair loose like spilled night. A red dress, torn at the hem, clung to her shoulders, and though it had been chosen to parade her like a prize, it only sharpened her dignity. The crowd whispered, some laughed, one man spat. Yet her eyes never lowered. They burned as if to say, "You may decide my fate, but you cannot name me." Silas's jaw tightened. He despised this kind of trade, the way men fattened on the misery of others, yet he felt his hand drifting to his coat pocket where gold coins lay heavy. He told himself it was pity, nothing more. And still, when the auctioneer's rasping voice called the first number, Silas lifted his hand. The hammer fell. Just like that, Ayanna's chains were pressed into his palm. She did not thank him, nor did she plead. She merely looked at him with a gaze that seemed to pierce through his broad chest and lodge somewhere deeper, a place he did not want touched. The whispering crowd followed them as they left, their smirks like knives. By the time Silas placed her on his wagon, the evening had cooled, yet his throat burned. He had bought her freedom. Yet why did it feel as though he had invited a storm into his life? At the ranch, Ayanna refused comfort. Silas offered her the large cabin, the good chair by the fire, the meals set neatly on the table. She chose instead to sit by the window in the smaller room, eyes fixed on the horizon, silent as stone. She ate only when he left the tray and retreated, though sometimes he thought he heard a faint hum of song in the dark. Silas built her a small cabin near the orchard, hammering nails by lantern light, hoping she might feel more her own. When he showed it to her, she simply nodded and walked inside without a word. He told himself he had done right by her, and yet unease gnawed. He had bought freedom, but he could not buy trust. Neighbors noticed. They always did. Clara May Dawson, widowed and kind-eyed but cautious, visited with a pie and a warning. "People are already talking, Silas. A rich cowboy keeping an Indian girl? You'll make enemies you can't afford." Her voice was soft, but the weight of judgment lay heavy in the space between them. Silas felt shame creep like a shadow, though he bit back against it. Still, he saw the way Ayanna's back stiffened when Clara's words drifted through the half-open door. Pride cut deeper than hunger, and Ayanna would not forget. Days passed with silence as their closest companion. Yet silence, when shared, is a language of its own. When Silas rode out to mend fences, he would find her following with steady steps, carrying tools. When she returned from gathering herbs, he would see her pause to leave a sprig of sage on his table. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the distance shrank. He taught her how to ride his black stallion, Thunder, steadying her with hands that lingered only as long as necessary. She showed him how to braid rawhide into intricate patterns her people once used in ceremony. Meals once eaten in silence became shared beneath the lantern, words halting, then flowing. But the world beyond the ranch did not soften. In town, whispers sharpened into jeers. When Silas rode beside Ayanna, men muttered. One spat near her feet. The worst came at night, words scrawled across his barn in black pitch, savage as whore. Silas burned with rage, fists ready, but Ayanna's hand stopped him. Her voice was calm, though her eyes glistened. They only fear what they do not understand. He swallowed the fury, but in the stillness of his room, shame pressed against his chest like a stone. One night, thunder split the sky. Rain lashed the ranch, and lightning clawed the earth. Silas found Ayanna curled near the fire, trembling. The proud mask she wore by day cracked, and for the first time she spoke of what she had lost. Her family taken in raids, her body sold like a coin passed from hand to hand. "I am free in name," she whispered, "but the chains do not leave so easily." Silas lowered himself beside her, his large hands awkward in their gentleness. He told her of his own scars, a childhood of silence after losing his parents, of walls built high to keep out grief. They sat as the storm raged, the fire crackling, their shadows leaning toward each other. He did not touch her, save to offer his coat. She took it, pressing the fabric close, as though it carried more warmth than the flames. The next morning, she worked beside him mending fences the storm had broken. When the wood splintered in his hands, she laughed, clear, unguarded. He found himself laughing with her, the sound strange on his tongue, but welcome. Each small gesture wove a thread, binding them. He began to wonder if these threads were leading him not toward obligation, but toward something far more dangerous, something like love. But danger of another kind loomed. Jedediah Crow, the traitor cheated of profit when Silas bought Ayanna, returned with poison on his tongue. In the saloon, he spread rumors that Silas had taken her as a mistress, parading virtue while hiding sin. Soon, a group of ranchers cornered Silas in town, their faces red with drink and spite. "Bought yourself a toy boon?" one sneered. Silas's hand went to his revolver, but before violence could spark, Ayanna stepped forward. She did not speak. She only looked at them with a gaze so steady, so unflinching, that the laughter faltered. For a moment, silence cut sharper than any blade. Later that night, Silas found himself confessing the truth he feared. "I can protect you," he said, voice hoarse. Ayanna looked at him, eyes dark and unyielding. "I don't need a protector," she said. "I need someone who sees me." Her words struck deeper than any insult could. For the first time, he admitted what had been rising in him like dawn. He loved her, not as property, not as obligation, but as the fiercest truth he had ever known. The final test came swift and brutal. Jedediah Crow returned under cover of night, slipping onto the ranch with 2 men, rope in hand, claiming she was never rightfully freed. Silas met them with fists and fury, his strength raw but outnumbered. The fight spilled across the barn, hay and blood mixing. Crow pinned Ayanna, sneering that she belonged to him. Yet before Silas could break free, Ayanna's hand closed on a branding iron heated in the coals. With a cry born of every humiliation, she struck. Crow fell, his face seared, his claim burned to ash. The ranch hands who had gathered stood frozen, town witnesses among them. They saw her not as a victim, but as a woman standing tall beside the cowboy who had bought her freedom and found, instead, his own. Silas, bleeding, sank to one knee before her, not as a master, but as a man. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Ayanna." She touched his face, the gentlest brush of fingers against his bruises, and said only, "Now I am free." Weeks later, beneath the cottonwoods, they were married quietly. Clara May stood by, tears in her eyes. Some in town watched with suspicion, others with awe. The whispers no longer cut, for whispers cannot pierce what has already been welded by fire and choice. Ayanna planted a garden near her cabin, the roots sinking deep, green shoots breaking through hard soil. Silas watched her, heart lighter than it had ever been. And if you lean close, if you listen to the tale as an old soul might whisper by the fire, you will hear this truth. In a world that measured worth in chains and coins, they discovered love in silence, in patience, in small mercies. And isn't that the truest kind of freedom? Perhaps love was never bought at all. Perhaps it was always waiting, earned by those brave enough to see.